Thanks. Deirdre Bolton here in New York at the New York Fed. The former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Nile Gardiner, is up with us next. And Nile, what do you make of a president of the United States talking about being a tariff man right after we thought maybe we were moving towards some sort of a deal with China on trade? Maybe he's just setting up a negotiation. I don't know. But what's your take on that?
Well, I don't think it's a very good move, that's for sure, and the markets are reflecting that. And when you're talking about tariffs, I mean, tariffs are effectively taxes on American consumers, and markets are going to react very negatively against tariffs. And so I think a lot of the momentum that you've seen over the weekend with the G20, and you saw yesterday as well, a lot of that momentum has been lost today. And I think that, discussion of a return to tariffs and a trade war with China, this is probably the last thing the markets want to hear right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's a very helpful message to be sending at this moment.
You have a pretty good read on global economies. Deirdre was talking about indicators that a recession may or may not be coming here in the United States. We've always assumed, as we've watched, even over the last 6 months, say that the U.S. is the best of the bunch, that other economies are struggling more. We've had indications from Germany. We've had indications from Japan that those economies are struggling. France has been in the news the last few weeks with these protests and the gas tax, which I guess is going away. But what's your take kind of on the global economy?
Yeah, well, I think, clearly, the United States has been the leader in terms of economic growth over the last 2 years. And that's largely as a result of pro-free market policies being implemented by the U.S. administration. If there's any reversal of that, and if indeed we do enter some kind of trade war with the European Union or with China, for example, that's going to have a very negative impact. But overall, I'd say the strength of the U.S. economy is significantly better than that of America's main competitors at this moment. And certainly in Europe, I would say that you still have a very volatile economic situation. You have potentially looming large on the horizon major economic problems in southern Europe. You look at Italy, Spain, for example, Greece, but also in France itself. I mean, we're seeing the biggest riots in central Paris since 1968. We have a deeply unpopular government there that is implementing very, very controversial environmental taxes, which I think will have a negative impact on the economy in France. So a lot to look out for on the European front, I think, at this time.
Is there a real threat to the leadership there, to Emmanuel Macron in France? I know that's a big move to, I guess, suspend this gas tax hike. It shows you that that the pressure was obviously building, but is there a threat to the actual government, to the people in power, especially Macron in France, do you think?
Well, that's a great question. The next French presidential election takes place in 2022. But Emmanuel Macron's position, I would say right now, is pretty precarious. His approval ratings hover between 20 and 30%. He's one of the most unpopular French presidents of modern times. And he's facing the kinds of civil unrest in the center of Paris that we've not seen in about half a century. And so this is a president whose power and influence is eroding by the day. And I think what we are seeing certainly are the forces of both the left and the right now uniting against Macron. You're seeing incredible levels of violence on the streets of French cities. And also we're seeing, I think, just widespread disenchantment and discontent in France, also at a time when unemployment remains very high, especially for young people in France. Mm-hmm. And Emmanuel Macron, I think, sort of behaves as a sort of imperial-style Napoleon, who's deeply out of touch with ordinary French people, doesn't understand the concerns of French workers. And this latest, carbon tax idea was absolutely, political and economic suicide. Now he's backtracking on that.
Yeah, blew up in his face. Nile Gardiner, always good to talk to you. We'll check back on all of